Welcome back to Spirit of an Athlete. I'm your host, Amanda Smith, creator of the Gutsy Chick Quiz at gutsychickquiz.com. If you want to know what your athletic mindset might be doing to your healing process, go take the quiz. On this episode, I invited my friend and doctor, Erika Schultz. She is a doctor of Chinese medicine and acupuncture, as well as a master foundational nutritionist. In this episode, she shares her resiliency method that she's been developing for years, which helps high performers and athletes heal from their chronic health conditions naturally. I'm working with her because I believe that I've hit a plateau on my healing journey, and I know that she's going to help push me through to the other side. The way she explains it in this episode is brilliant, and I hope you stick around to hear what she has to say. Dr. Erika Schultz, welcome to Spirit of an Athlete. Thank you so much for joining us to really talk about all things you do.
Yeah. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Amanda.
You're welcome, and thank you. Okay, so share a little bit about your personal health journey, because I think that'll set us up for helping people better understand who you are and what you're about.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of all starts with the healer trying to heal herself, and that's definitely a part of my story, my path for certain. Yeah, you can resonate with that. Absolutely. That's why we're talking to each other today.
Right.
Seeing those trials and tribulations, and definitely something that's an ongoing scenario for sure. But it really started for me actually when I was really hitting puberty. As soon as my hormones started to change, I started having brain and nervous system issues and dysregulation. And that looked like the start of grand mal seizures. So kind of my story went from when I was 10 years old. If I took a step back, that was probably about age 12 when I had my first one. At age 10, I had shingles on my face, and they took pictures of me for the medical books because I'd never seen it so young and expression. And then somewhere around age probably 8 or 9, I stepped on a rusty nail, had a shot that I don't believe is any longer on the market. So I think probably there was some pre-genetic disposition that it started with my grandmother having sort of like absence types of seizures. My mom remembers. And then, a cascade of the right toxins just led enough exposure to those led to enough, immune suppression. And then, the old little chickenpox virus was rearing its ugly head and literally on my face, affecting my cranial nerves. And ultimately that led to a situation where, and I came from a family where my parents were sort of naturally minded anyways. We tried to address it with supplementation, and ironically supplementation that I use today, just that in a way that's sorted out and figured out so that it actually works for me. And we'll talk more about that as we get into the process. But yeah, scary stuff. Eventually, just as an impressionable young teenager, I did not want to look different than my peers. And I begged them to just put me on the medication. I used that for a long time to manage them. And gratefully, I didn't have like the most of severe cases either. But I got to fast forward into my adulthood. And I always knew in the back of my mind that I was really covering something up and that I wasn't really getting to the root cause. I was willing to take that because it let me live my life. But because of the fact that I wasn't getting the root cause, by the time I got into my 30s, my health was kind of in its like lowest point. And I knew I needed to do something. I didn't know exactly what it looked like until my twin sister, who was learning this nutritional testing technique, actually really said, you've got to try this. It was at the end of my first year of grad school when I was studying Chinese medicine, getting my master's in Chinese medicine and acupuncture. Health tanked in the digger. I was like, I'll do anything. I didn't think I was going to make it through the next few years, and went to start saw this lady, got everything put in the right order at the right time, in the right amounts. It made all the difference. I went from not thinking I was going to make it through the next 3 years to being inspired to learn everything I could about functional medicine, functional nutrition, root cause medicine. And that just parlayed nicely and started my practice actually when I was still in grad school for becoming an acupuncturist. So that actually has become the majority. I started seeing clients when I was still in school, started going to every seminar on the weekends I could. So just like almost doing way more than I probably should have at that time of my life. But it set a great basis, a great tone. And now the majority of my practice is actually in the realm of doing nutritional medicine, which for which I've combined all of my experience into probably the most comprehensive, taking the best of modern techniques in preventative and root cause medicine. That means functional medicine integration, foundational medicine, and quantum medicine. And then underlying that is some of the ancient medicine principles that worked for a long time ago that we know. And so I've just brought all of those things into culmination. And now I have a trademark process called the Resiliency Method.
Holy cats. Okay, we got to
Yeah.
unpack this. All right, let's go back to puberty.
Yep.
What is it about puberty or any major hormone shift that really sets us off? Because this was when all of my food issues started. And
Yeah.
for me it was looking back, I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I had a food intolerance, gluten
Sure.
at that time." And uh it really showed up for me at a psychological level. If you ask my brother, he would tell you I was crazy.
Uh,
And if you asked my mom, she would say that you were not stable. But we expected that because you're a female with hormones.
right. Right.
So, what is it about that time frame that throws the body out of whack? Because that's when your grand mal seizures
Uh-huh.
started.
Yeah. I think it's a good question. I think it's probably a combination of being in that body for long enough, right? It's always easier to address situations that haven't been around as long, right? So at that stage, you've got a good decade underneath your belt. So there's already been some duration of living with a situation where there's some deterioration happening in your body,
Mm,
some of which may have even been inherited, some
mhm,
of it which may have been exposure to your environment. I was eating all sorts of Kellogg's cereal
mhm,
prior to that. So I was definitely had enough exposure to glyphosate and such that my ability to manage that toxic load that just kept on compiling on itself, right?
mhm,
Um, and then we get to the point where now there's some degradation that's happened not only in that 10 plus years, but maybe also some preset by bringing my parents together with their genetic makeup. Also had some scenarios that I was predisposed to. Because later, when what started to happen is I noticed that so I was telling about my mom's mom, my grandmother, who I never met, having some of the neurological signals as she
mhm.
was, a young woman. And then also, though, it was on my dad's side of the family too, because I
Oh.
had a cousin that would have really severe migraines. Those brain patterns actually work or show the same on an EEG. And so they're very similar in terms of what's going on neurotransmitter wise and electrical current wise.
Mhm,
And so then as we were progressing through life, I also started to see that my grandmother had some neurological things. And then my dad started having seizures when he was an adult, like later on in life. So the predisposition was there for
oh,
me,
yeah.
right?
Mhm,
And then just because I'm what I call the next generation from them, with they taken their gene pools together. I'm the next generation. I'm one more generation that's been exposed to all those noxious substances since the Industrial Revolution. The
mhm,
the schedules for the preventative strategies are increasing, right? And so, combination of all of those things, right time, just enough of a bow break, and here we are, right? Like with just such a level of depletion in the body that hormonally, and I think too that quite frankly, seizure disorders, a lot of neurological patterns do have to do a lot with hormones, because there's a whole system and aspect that we deal with in our process called the neuroendocrine system. So
Mhm.
fixing the brain. So it's a combination of just enough shifting too that's happening at that stage of life, and then that kind of sets. And it was always for me too, was the type of seizure would be around when my hormones would be shifting too. That's when I was most susceptible to an event or an episode. And so there's definitely some things that I think happen, especially with the neurological system, that have to do with progesterone and certain fluctuations of that at different times, which has an impact as well neurologically. Hmm.
Woof. Okay. You mentioned a twin sister.
Yeah,
Did she have any of these issues?
she did. She didn't have the full blown grand mal. So that's an interesting point. Good, you're
Mhm.
savvy for picking that up, right? Because that's always something that's unique to study. So she would have what we call petit mal type of situation where her eyes, we both grew up kind of like eyes fluttering a little bit more
Yeah.
patterns, but hers never turned into grand mal. I think the distinguishing factor may have been that I had that shot when I stepped on the rusty nail, which she did not step on. And then within 2 years, I had the viral expression on my face, which affects the upper cervical nerve
Mhm.
areas. That's where those map to. And so I think that also just laid the foundation for me to be more susceptible to having more of an expression of that already pre-programmed, genetic predisposition, which is really a good case study for how it happens in most of our bodies. So while listeners could say, well, I don't have those kinds of symptoms, the reality is you have that pattern of things happening in your body. It just expresses differently in terms of the symptom.
Mhm.
Okay. But what it took for my body to get to the point where I'd fall down and convulse and lose control of my limbs is still at play in most bodies. It's just the impact or the symptom may either not be as noticeable, may not be as severe, may not be as intense. But all
Mhm.
of the same mechanisms at play that took my body to get there are at play in most other bodies.
You've got me thinking about the nervous system right now because you brought up the fact that you had this chicken pox,
Uh-huh.
or and for you it wasn't chicken pox, right?
But it's the herpes zoster virus is responsible for the expression of chickenpox. It's also responsible for the expression of shingles. Hmm.
Okay, so that showed up, and to anybody who's ever had shingles, it's excruciatingly painful. Was it excruciatingly painful on your
Oh,
face?
absolutely. It was a nightmare. I even have a picture on my phone of me. They took it with me holding a Care Bear or something, back in the day, uh, with the flowers. Everybody felt so sorry for me. But the interesting thing about viruses is really important distinction too. Is we're made to have viruses. We have them in our makeup, in our genetic makeup. But the game that you want to play with viruses, in particular, any virus, that's whether that Epstein-Barr, herpes family, whatever it might be, is you want to keep them away. Okay. So, and
Calm
the
down.
way that you keep a virus from expressing and keep it away is by making sure that you don't get too toxic inside, and that you've got your immune system optimized such that that isn't such a pertinent, it's not really able to express into some kind of symptomatic picture, right?
Oh, okay, so this is the fun story that rolls around. If you've had chicken pox and you don't get the vaccine, as an adult, it's gonna show back up as shingles. Is that
uh yeah, so not necessarily.
uh-huh.
Yep.
You just totally poo-pooed all over that,
Uh-huh.
because
Yep.
ultimately you have to have the right environment, right?
Right.
Which that's epigenetics, as
Yep.
well as the right level of toxicity rolling around in your body to make it express
Right.
again.
That's the story that you've
Mhm.
been told. and that sells and
That
positions a lot
sells
of,
vaccines, doesn't it?
yeah, which those, are positioned to us as not the money maker, but the money maker from receiving some of that type of care can be with the need for more medical procedures down the
Mhm.
road.
More intervention. Of
More
course.
intervention. Yep.
Of course.
Yep.
Okay, so going back to the nervous system, we've
Yeah.
got shingles on the face. Was it this side of your face?
Yeah. It was
Like
this
up
side.
by your it was in the eye.
Yep. And actually, with the shingles, so the blisters were all like right here, and they went up my forehead. I think just up to my scalp here. I remember the night that I started to feel it's like all itchy and burny, and no idea what was going on. And basically, the lesions apparently, if they had gone down like to the midpoint of my nose, there was likely to be some cornea eye damage.
Yep.
So they were waiting to see, which could affect my vision. We were waiting to see if that happened, never did. So that was good. But yeah, they were like, we've never seen this in somebody your age. It's usually in the adults, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it was just enough of a setup for me, given some of my history and what had happened. And that one that's no longer on the market, obviously for probably there was probably some other impacts out there for other people. And again, that might have looked differently. But when I do the research, the one that was available during that time period of my life, I can determine that it's no longer available. I
Right.
don't know for certain that that's exactly the one that I had, but I don't know that there was anything else on the market at that time. And so, all that to say, that's been the story with those types of interventions throughout time, right? That's
Yeah.
not an isolated event. That has
Right.
been something that has been the case. And, back to what we're talking about in terms of that toxic burden, it doesn't matter if it came that way or if it came from exposure to mercury in your mouth from amalgams, injections, fish,
Those old school
whatever.
thermometers.
For what?
The old
For
school
kids.
thermometers.
Good God. I know so many guys that have
Got them in
gotten
your mouth.
exposure from playing with it in their hands and such.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that was me.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
definitely broke a I think I broke, like, 3 of them. I was notorious for breaking the mercury thermometers. It drove my
Right.
parents nuts, and then they
Uh-huh.
came out with those cool little strips that you just place over the forehead, and it
Oh
would,
yeah.
like, show.
Yeah. Yeah. You were a scientist even back then, so you're trying to always an engineer. You're always trying to
Break it.
re-engineer.
Yep,
Right.
break it and fix it.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yes, and
But
I got to
that's
play
not
with mercury.
singly its only thing. That's like a big factor. That's a big factor that will cause disruption to the nervous system, too much of a toxic burden. And that will prohibit the body from healing effectively. So even if people that are listening have ever tried a natural, process to deal with their health conditions, and by natural I mean something that wasn't pharmaceutical
Or over the
in
counter.
nature, that sometimes they will actually get stopped up in that process. Because if you're just like taking a protocol of some kind of detox or a supplement, like, if you start talking about heavy metals, people are like, oh, well, I'll just take some chlorella. You know, whatever you do, if you don't like make sure it matches well with your body,
Mhm.
you could have some problems. And that has to do with the fact that it can cause you to detox too quickly. A supplement like chlorella can have a big impact on a person with thyroid issues. So it can
Sure.
throw them into a little bit of a funk. And I had that happen at the first bit of time when I was started to detox. But being able to put a system behind it that helps you organize it and put those things in the right time, right amount, right order is crucial, especially if you're talking about the fact that if you're a high performer, which a lot of your audience is, I put them in the high
Mhm.
performer category, they need to be on, they need to be able to perform. And sometimes if healing is too disruptive, it's hard to get out of the gate
Yep,
for a lot of high performers because they'll start down the path of healing. The healing becomes disruptive to their performance, and then they have to opt out
yep,
of healing.
yep. Or they start healing and it feels really good, and then they push themselves and it reverses everything that they did, but they blame it on the fact that the thing that they tried wasn't working.
Ah, true.
Yeah,
Yep.
that
Eh,
overload.
Yep. And sometimes it's not going far enough. So, for example,
Mm.
a lot of people, I would say, kind of do my first phase of the resiliency method. In other words, you might be able to you'll have more options for that phase of care because you can go with a functional medicine doctor, is doing a protocol. You can do something, you might find something online and you'll start taking, a protocol of products, or Dr. Google will certainly talk to you all day about how to start with some of those heavy metal detox, parasite cleanses, some of those things that people are always researching, but oftentimes are running around in circles. Because inside of that process where I call it filling the dumpster, there's several things that can come up for people. There's the toxicity piece, there's the pathogen piece. Sometimes they're missing that there's a scar on their body that's interfering with their ability to heal. Food sensitivities can be inside that bucket. I'd say mold exposure and or Lyme, chronic,
Mm.
Lyme cases
Oh,
too.
yep. All chronic
So that's
conditions.
just first phase. I call filling the dumpster, targeting those things in the body and putting some kind of intervention in to help deal with them. Okay.
Hmm.
But in that, what I just rattled off, there's like 10 or 15 possibilities.
Hmm.
You can do lab tests and you can isolate what might be present in your body. But if you don't put that and like that healing, the treatment in the right place at the right time, it can have an impact on your ability to go through life day to day. So that's where my process excels, is it's like sort of puts organization around those things that you need to do.
Hmm.
And for example, if we do a heavy metal detox on the right products that you need to take at the very beginning of our process, oftentimes we don't have to do much of anything with mold or with fungus, because just taking the um the heavy metal burden down helps your body overcome the fungal challenge.
Hmm.
Also, in that same vein, if we earn enough right or energy inside the body to do enough mitochondrial reorganization and healing at a mitochondrial level, if we do that at the right time and we take care of parasites, well, then oftentimes we're not having to do treatments for Lyme over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You said a word that I have a feeling my audience is going to go, wait, what? Mitochondrial. This is by far one of the
Mm.
deepest studies I've done in the body. This was 2, 3 years ago. I really did a deep dive into mitochondria because it's the energy body within the cell.
Yep.
It's where we get our energy.
Yep.
And as athletes, as people who are trying to constantly optimize so that we can do the thing that we want to do, high performers,
Mm-hmm.
mitochondria is definitely a place to gain ground.
Absolutely.
What are you seeing when it comes to people with chronic health conditions like the list that you just rattled off and their mitochondria? Just in the
Definitely.
get-go.
Oh, definitely some cellular dysfunction. And there's the inability to symptoms, a chronic health pattern or picture. But, to relate it to a lot of your audience too, which is the high performing athlete, they can also have mitochondrial dysfunction, which can impact their ability to perform as an athlete from day to day, right?
Mhm.
They oftentimes, though, like an athlete isn't necessarily somebody that can relate to chronic illness. Some can, certainly there are some, I'm going to say that unequivocally. But, if you think about the nature of being a high performing athlete, you probably have some decent amount of energy to be able to expend your body in such a way. So, mitochondria is vital, it's important. And certainly when it comes to being consistent in performance, the more that you can optimize that, the more effective that it will be in terms of working with your body to have the performance you're looking for. But let me put this out to you. If I told you, just like we were talking about that first phase where we're feeling the dumpster, and phase 2 and 3 really, in my process, really starts to delve more into the mitochondria because we're starting to do more cellular detox, getting the body, the part of the point of the process where we want to rebuild,
Mhm.
right? And we want to improve the damage to the organs, tissues, glands, the neural tissue, the brain, the cells, that was done from having all those things go on that we're talking about in phase one. But if
Mhm.
I boost your mitochondria in phase one, and you've got all of this fire inside your
Building.
body and your terrain, what do you think the impact of that will be?
Oh, it's gonna burn something else down.
Yeah.
Now we have a
Mhm.
dumpster fire.
Well, it's almost like I always say to people, inflammation in itself isn't bad. Inflammation is actually a necessary tool and mechanism of your body to heal something. It's you want inflammation at work for you. But the difference is you want inflammation as a controlled burn, not as a roaring forest fire. So if
Mhm.
I boost mitochondria when there's some kind of fire going on that maybe starts to get stoked a little bit and starts to get a little out of control, if I'm promoting mitochondria, I could start to promote the energy of things that I don't want to promote the energy for.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see what
And
I'm
then you
saying?
get a dumpster fire.
Yeah, it might be a little bit like sticking some lighter fluid on that fire. So it's
Mhm.
important, it's vital. And you've got to get to that point where you want your mitochondria doing that naturally. But one of the strategies you need to have good mitochondrial function is to take away the things that would suck the energy out of the body and suck the energy from the cells. And that's filling the dumpster, you know?
Yep. I love that. In my process, we call the dumpster root cause tracking.
It
So we're
is. Yeah.
we're trying to find the root cause and then we're trying to track it and
Yep.
follow it and
Yep.
heal it. And
Yep.
then the second phase for me, which sounds again very similar to you, is body rebalancing.
Uh-huh.
So now we've got the dumpster fire under control.
Yep.
And we're going to go and heal the rest of the pieces that are now ready and we have access to heal them. So I
Yep.
love that our processes are lining up.
Yeah. And phase two for me is a physiological, like cellular detox. In other words, let's give you an example. In phase two, we will go back in and retrace where all the phlegm is at in the body. And the reason that's important is because that's garbage that your
Yep.
body produced. Anytime it sees something it doesn't like, such as what we were talking about, those stressors in phase one, parasites, heavy metals, blah, 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 your body
Mhm.
is so smart. It goes, ooh, I think I'm going to try to capture that and slow that down from having a bigger impact on this whole system. So it
Mm.
creates more excess phlegm. And so
Mhm.
it does that. But what happens is you have a bunch of phlegm, then you also have the garbage that we're trying to clean out with different processes. But you've got phlegm that's sticking around that's holding some of those toxins yet. And so you've got to also go back in and remove that piece of it, right?
Mhm.
Otherwise, a body that's under stress is always producing phlegm. And then phlegm over time compounds onto more phlegm. And now you've got what in Chinese medicine we call a phlegm pathology,
Mhm.
which is a tumor, cyst, nodule. And depending on the tissue, if it's in the fatty tissue, it's a lipoma. It's a
Mhm.
capsule. It's
Yep.
a smart technique, right? If you think
Yep.
about that, that's pretty brilliant. Throw a little sponge around it, throw a little container around it. Let's keep it encapsulated. Let's keep it from hurting and harming. But then over time, you've got the buildup of phlegm. You've got poor blood circulation, blood flow. You've got cells that are not getting nutrients. And then you start having cell death. And then that's what is the difference between something that is, benign versus something that's more serious. Let's put it that way. Yeah. So that's phase. That's the first part of phase two. When we do that, ironically, we reverse the food sensitivities that a lot of people have.
Oh yeah.
So, whereas a lot of healing processes will leave people with, you know, take out these 20 foods and then say la vie. That was me,
Yeah. Same.
and yeah, and I was like, okay, that we're missing something because me, my colleagues, we're all like living in more constriction, restriction, fear, scare. We're all like the message we're sending people is, yeah, come get healthy. Look how you can get healthy, and then you can't have any fun, and
Right?
you can't you ready?
There's no fun to be had.
Let's
You
go.
cannot eat anything you like. Cake is gone. Ice cream, forget about it. No sugar, no dairy, and definitely no gluten.
Exactly. And they're like, where do I sign up? That sounds like so much fun. I want to get healthy now,
I would rather burn the fucking dumpster.
Yeah, exactly. So it it wasn't enough. And I was stuck there on that merry-go-round for a while until I just started to ask more questions. And I started to bring in and integrate my Chinese medicine background. That just became just inputs and then working with clients. I was like, oh, so we get to this point and the body wants to do this next. And then, and really having that whole, at one point I've had to back off so I can get podcasts done. But at one point it's over 100 visits in a week, so a lot of bodies to see and work through these processes. And I just started to really set forth that, I postulate that I want to create more expansion. That really true health is being expansion and having more resiliency and having more adaptability and having not being afraid about the fact that we've changed from 3G or 4G to 5G.
Yep.
Like that we didn't have to control for every little single thing in our environment. We could actually enjoy some of the things that might be naughty or things that you should not do, and really have the attention on expanding. And I think it's for high performers, the people that do the best. You guys know the mental game that goes with that. It's not about like, what do I have to avoid? It's about like, how do I perform, right? And
Yes.
what is my attention on that's going to create the outcome that I want? Well, it's the same with health. You want better health, and your attention is on how much you can't do, what you have to be afraid of, and it's like, okay, that frequency's like down here, and so I just knew we needed to play a different game and with the body. And that's where, in our process, the second phase, we get into cellular detox. We use carbon-based technology, which is recognized, easily absorbed and recognized by the body. And then ultimately we get the body back to where it receives what it's supposed to receive and heal through, which is whole foods. And I'm not talking about the Whole30 diet, where you have meat and veggie and such. I'm talking about the things that you and I don't want to put on our plate and put our fork and a knife into, but actually our ancestors used for eons and thousands of years that precede us. And that was the form of organ meats, or excuse me, organ meats. You call them, I don't like to use the word meat because meat really is the muscle, but organs, collagen, and using those things that's our fuel. That's what our body recognizes and will uptake and do something with more effectively and efficiently than over just taking an isolate of a nutraceutical product that doesn't come with the cofactors. So most of you end up like just pissing out, basically.
Peeing or pooping out. Yep.
Yep.
If it even makes it that far through the intestinal tract.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. Because most people don't realize, and nutrition science is complex. It's very much like going to be into the world of chemistry and such, and understand. And I don't think we even understand an inkling of really what goes into nutritional science. I think we've made a lot of progress, but the vitamin C that you get with the carrot, that comes along with the vitamin E so that you absorb it. And, all the other cofactors to have you actually use that vitamin C is very different than taking one isolate of vitamin C complex, which is ascorbic acid, which is the one that most of us are reaching for when we think we're taking vitamin C. It's only one tiny aspect of that whole entire complex nutrient that is vitamin C. And that's the same with vitamin B, etc. Right? So,
yeah. Nature was much smarter than the chemistry that the humans decided to shove into us.
It's perfect. It's perfect in design already. And so are we. And the job of someone like me and you is to really just unleash that inside of the individual and facilitate what's already there, and leverage it and make it better.
Yep. And amplify whatever. Amplify the bad so that we can get rid of it, and amplify the good so that we can thrive.
Right.
All right, Dr. Erika. Where in the world can people find you so that they know who to reach out to when they hear this podcast and go, oh, I need to talk to her.
Yeah, awesome. Well, all the deets are in the show notes.
You know
I
it.
won't take the liberty of like actually spelling out the web URL, but there's a way to engage us. There's a couple options to do a discovery call. So that's like low level of, hey, Dr. Erika, I heard you talk, but I'm not sure if you can help me with this. We do the gamut, from the simple to the really complex, and sometimes the most complex are the most rewarding for me. But certainly
Same.
my situation was complex. And so that's one of the reasons why I know how to deal with complex cases. And so there's discovery call option. There's like, I want to jump in and like actually get, you to test me and see what's coming up. And then, and I'll put together a report of findings and a recommendation, and we'll talk about what it would look like to move forward. And that's the initial consultation. All of these options are less than $200 to just get engaged in the process. So yeah. And I think there's also a link in there too for like a free report or something that you can just to learn a little bit more about if you're trying to profile yourself as whether or not this would be right for you. You can kind of learn a little bit more there as well.
Absolutely. Yes, there is a link. Oh, you're going to learn about Dr. Erika. And there's also in the show notes the link for that discovery call that Dr. Erika was talking about.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you so much. I am so unbelievably excited to work with you and to learn your method and to really unleash the thriving side of me.
Absolutely.
So, Erika, thank you.
What's about? All right. Awesome, Amanda. Thanks for the opportunity to chat.
Thank you so much for listening to Spirit of an Athlete. If you want to find out what part of your mindset might be holding you back from healing, but has helped you as an athlete, go check out the Gutsy Chick Quiz at gutsychickquiz.com. And if you would like more of me, you can go to bodywhisperhealing.com and read my blog, check out other podcast episodes, find out how I work with my clients, and much more. Thanks for listening to this episode.